Thanks, Shauna. Chris, hey, how's it
What's
going?
going on, man?
This is I feel like this is a conversation 20 years in the making, or a conversation we've been having for the last 20 years. We met in the early days of the aughts, talking, I think, about energy and what was ahead. And I think our paths crossed repeatedly as we both wandered down different pathways. And you went on to do some pretty incredible investing, companies like Uber and Twitter and Stripe, Instagram, et cetera, et cetera. You seem to have what we call in the industry the Midas touch. But now you're, I think, all in for climate. So I think we should start off there. Why? Why are you all in? What's the why for you?
Well, I mean, it's fun to be catching up with an OG like you and to pick up conversations we literally were having like 20 years ago. So this is awesome to be back here again. And I remember back then talking about this stuff with you was really uninteresting to everybody else around us. And so it's fun to not only have a whole event oriented around it, but just see this industry blowing up the way it is. Yeah, we're all in on climate, and we have been for a while. We just kind of didn't take the covers off until we were confident that we were really good at it. And so now with Lowercarbon Capital, you can kind of see we've been really active in this space, rolling up some incredible companies that are blowing our minds every day, building a really, really wonderful team of scientists and making some shit happen.
Why did you shift? So, I mean, for a lot of people from the outside looking in, some would say it was an abrupt shift. You just said, this is it, this is my future. Why'd you do it?
Well, back when I was at Google, I was responsible for a lot of the energy stuff, and we were the largest power consumer in 3 US states. And so my job, and one of the things that brought us together back then, talking about solar deals, when you were on the solar side, was to buy a bunch of power. And so Larry and Sergey pronounced from on high that even when the economics weren't there back then, we were going to be innovators in the space. We're going to try and bend the curve on cost and really push to supply Google with clean power. And so it was amazing driving around the country, traveling around the world, looking at demonstration projects, experimenting with literally troughs full of cow manure to burn methane, all kinds of cool stuff to try and push this industry forward. And so I missed it. I missed the hard science of it, and I missed the mind-blowing innovation that was happening. And it was great. Obviously, traditional venture was really good to me, and I felt good at it. And it's particularly fun being on Shark Tank, and that show always gave me good vibes. But there came this point in my career where I would see someone come into the tank, they'd be pitching a kitchen gadget, and the pitch was tight. And I'd say, okay, that's a good company, and I can be helpful to that company, but is this really what I want to do for the next 10 to 12 years? If you go on The Bachelor and get married, like everyone expects you to get divorced 60 days later. But when you do a deal on Shark Tank, you are married to that company for 10, 12, sometimes 15 years. That's a reality of our business. And so I just found myself increasingly detached from that. We had someone working for us at the time who was really into e-gaming. And I was like, do I really give a shit about this? Like, can I ever get excited about e-gaming? Can I go to the stadium and watch League of Legends in person? And I realized that was never going to be my thing. And so as we peeled back from that business, we started looking for the areas where our investments of time and passion and money, both for profit and philanthropically, would really move the needle on the things that excited us and bothered us at the same time. And so we've done a ton. We helped rebuild the democratic tech stack in the wake of the Trump election. We do a lot in criminal justice reform, prison conditions, sentencing reform, but climate was a core focus for us. And so we dove all in, and it's fun as hell. It doesn't feel like work for me right now.
I know there's a lot of corporate folks in the audience at Verge, and I want to go back to that beginning days of Google when Larry and Sergey took such a strong interest in solar, and so did you. It was amazing. My company, fledgling startup that it was, trying to radically reduce the cost of solar by about 90%. I would go up and down Sand Hill Road, and the same folks who had backed me in the .com 1.0 era in the late 90s would look at me and say, no one's ever going to really invest in this solar stuff, which sounded to me like it's a go time, because in 1998, they would also say, no one's ever going to invest in this internet stuff. And so I saw the signal and I went all in, but I went out to talk to customers. We eventually did raise venture money, but I went and talked to customers, and there just wasn't really that corporate interest until those guys stepped up. And one of the things they said was, please build solar arrays all over our corporate campus, but also set it up so that we can have Walmart and Cisco and Microsoft and all of our competitors come over and see what we've done, so they could take that leadership position. And they obviously had a hugely catalytic and they had a catalytic role in making all this happen. And I think today, in so many aspects of climate tech, there are opportunities for everybody watching this to play a similar kind of role in different directions.
Well, I think now I love thinking back to those days where we'd sit in a room and my bosses would tell me, hey, go tell Andrew what would happen if we ordered 50x more than anyone had ever ordered. Can Andrew go take his whole facility to a new factory and reduce the cost curve? And we knew at the time there wasn't a true cost benefit analysis just on paper alone. But to us, it really mattered that we were proud of the work we were doing and proud of our impact on the planet. And so even though buying clean power for us, one of the largest power consumers in 3 states in the union, even though buying clean power costs more than coal, we wanted to build a place that we were proud to be at. And by the way, I think for folks in this audience right now who are from corporate interests, they can look at this from 2 places. They can look at this like, hey, let's be good world citizens. Let's do something to address this major crisis that is impacting all of us. None of us are immune from this emergency right now. And let's do so in a way that actually attracts talent and retains talent and makes people proud to work here. And so let's do it out of the goodness of our hearts. Or at this point, let's just do it because the sheer economics are there. Right. I mean, our old economy of digging up and burning old dinosaur bones, which is literally how we power our economy right now, is just expensive. The math is so much clearer that using the sun to power our economy is much cheaper. And so for me, my heart is warmed when I see sheer CFOs literally doing cost benefit analysis, not triple bottom line, but on the traditional gap bottom line, realizing this makes us money. And I mean, I've seen it taken the extreme. My friend Chris James at Engine One, who went to Exxon and made the case for it's just better business to start to decarbonize, and put 3 members on that board there. And when we went out and raised our funds, so we raised $800 million in a couple of days, and we had billions of dollars of interest that we literally couldn't accommodate. But I loved when I saw LPs come in who had a climate mandate. It's always amazing when a foundation or university says, hey, look, we're trying to shift more of our portfolio into climate, so can we put some money with you? That's good, feels good. But what really warmed my heart was when people who probably don't vote like I do and probably don't have a lot in common with me, and some of whom probably think that January 6th was a tourist visit to the Capitol building, would come and say, hey, look, we've looked at these numbers and they just add up. This industry has changed and this is just plain good business now. Because essentially carbon has a price. It's expensive. Every time carbon is embedded into a product, it costs more. And so as we look around that wheel of emissions, what do we look at? Bio and ag and transport and energy and building materials and industrial chemicals. Every single time you take carbon out of the equation, you save a bunch of money. Like think about, you guys know the company Solugen, making industrial chemicals using enzymes instead of oil. That's a 9-figure run rate business with 60% margins for a commodity. And the guy who on the other end who buys that stuff asks 2 questions. Is it hydrogen peroxide and is it cheaper? Well, then fuck it, I'll buy it. I don't think that guy cares about the climate. He's just buying the cheaper product. And so that's what's been amazing right now is we see companies getting there. Either they get there by guilt and shame, which I don't think actually scale very well. They get there by wanting to take pride in what they're doing and be able to explain to their partners and their kids and their employees, like, hey, this is why we're a positive actor on the planet. And that works pretty well. Or they get there by sheer greed, which I think is the most positive motivating factor and the most effective factor in changing systems on this planet. Yeah. So if we offer people cheaper, better, faster, easier to use, sexier, cooler, more delicious stuff, they'll buy it and they'll buy us out of this problem.
I think probably like you, I get asked the question all the time, what's different about cleantech 1.0 in 2008? And we're seeing, one of the things I love is what you just said, there's asset benefit, there's asset returns at every single place in the stack. So now renewable energy is just energy. It's not renewable energy. We take away, like we took away e-commerce, we took away the E, it's just commerce. That's how the world works. Renewable energy now is just a big infrastructure investment opportunity. So you can raise billions and billions of dollars for that place in the stack. And then you move down and you move down and you get closer and closer to venture scale risks, things that are actually still have a lot of alpha in them, but also a lot of risk associated. So let's talk about that. There's tons of venture money rushing in right now. You guys are part of that, but you've been at it for a while and you understand the space. What do you think happens next with all of these other folks who maybe aren't going as deep, but are still pouring a lot of money in?
Yeah, so I mean, I look at it kind of on the venture supply side, and then how does that match up with the demand side, whether it's with retail customers, businesses, or government as a buyer? And so on the venture supply side, I mean, first of all, we know that nowadays being a venture capitalist has become a default job. I mean, I have friends who got fired and are like, what are you going to do next? Ah, shit, I'll launch a fund. And so that's just become a default thing. It's easier than ever to raise a fund using these tools. And so what happens is, I think a lot of people, particularly in the wake of a very hot, fire-driven, smoky summer, are like, okay, I'm going to dedicate my life to climate. They're going through a midlife crisis, reflecting on this pandemic. It's a good thing. But the reality is, without a skill set in that space, I see a real clustering of focusing on that kind of barely scratch the surface. Hey, we're going to try and change consumer behavior on the front by giving them an app that helps remind them to use paper straws or turn their lights out. And that's good. And I'm never going to block somebody from doing that or get in their way or salt that, but it's not going to change stuff at scale. And strangely enough, the prices for that kind of stuff are super high because there is an abundance of investors who understand that app layer. But as you go deeper into the science stack, it becomes a really specialized function. I mean, what we look at every day, and we have, I think, the most prolific deal flow in the space right now, is that what we look at every day are energy innovations that are insane. That, I mean, some of which Einstein literally declared wouldn't be possible. We see stuff happening in synthetic biology that's nuts. I mean, right now we're working with a company that literally is using plants to mine nickel. Like that only happens with a deep understanding of biology. And so, you know, our company Lilac that's mining lithium does it quite literally 10,000 times faster than conventional methods. I've been investing for a long time, and I've never seen a slide that says 10,000 times faster. So that one gets me excited. But so what we're seeing is, I think we have this cadre of really talented investors. You and Obvious are a great partner. We see other folks like Breakthrough Energy Ventures, Prelude, Impact, 50 Years Fund. Just this kind of there's a group of people who have built those deep science benches to understand that where the real innovations are happening is just some mind-blowing stuff, but you got to work really hard at it. And so I don't think it's something people can tiptoe into. Now, that said, on the other end, the corporate thirst for buying and partnering and investing is unprecedented, and we love it because that's where a ton of expertise really is. And so I love when automotive, energy, aerospace, big ag companies come and want to get involved with this, because rather than kind of beating up the energy companies, and I know we all have a lot of bruises and there's a lot of reasons to, the reality is if we give them a way to transform their businesses, they might just move out of that. So, you know, like I think of, we have a company, Heart Aerospace, that set out, one guy, Anders, set out to build a 19-seat electric airplane. Boeing and Airbus told him it was absolutely impossible. It would never happen. We invested. I wish we'd invested more at the time, but fast forward a year and a half, he's got a working powertrain that he built mostly in the computer using machine learning, because that's what's changed, is that most of the stuff can be built in the computer and trialed over and over again. And the same people who said he'd never get it done now have put billions of dollars of orders in for his plane because it makes their unprofitable routes profitable. I love seeing that. And so as a first step, I think every company should start with normative to just understand what their carbon footprint really is. Work with Servest to figure out what the risk to your company is. Because as you pointed out, Andrew, there aren't climate companies anymore. If you are a company that serves people who eat, who move around the planet, who build stuff, who use chemicals or building materials in any way, who use energy in any way,
who make money. If you make money in the world today, you are somehow climate related. So in the last couple of minutes, there are a bunch of founders or potential founders watching here as well. What's your message for them? Because you've worked with some of the greats in the last decade. How do we bring more of that climate talent over?
I mean, I love it. I mean, later today, I'm working with something called the Client Draft that is literally bringing a whole group of C-level executives from traditional technology into this space. But I couldn't be more inspired by the talent I'm seeing come into this space right now. A generation of young people, more diverse than anyone I've ever worked with, who graduated from hard engineering classes, from hard science programs, knowing that they were going to start a company, be entrepreneurs, and save the planet. It's incredible. Like they're absolutely intimidating. We
set up with you guys. We set up climatedraft.org. Everyone should check it out. Just a couple of weeks ago, they were all volunteer core to put it together. And the amount of talent, the talent side from traditional tech of very, very senior execs at big public companies, all saying, "Look, I'm just climate curious. I'm just here to learn." But secretly, a lot of them are coming for a career shift. It's extraordinary what's happening there.
Yeah, I mean,
look, I think we're out of time.
But I think what we're seeing is that it no longer has to be mutually exclusive to have a massively positive impact on the planet and make a ton of money. And I think that's what's been really exciting. And it wasn't always that way, but the economics have shifted. And I really appreciate, Andrew, everything you've done to push this space forward. And that's why we love working with you. And I'm hopeful to see a bunch of people from this audience join, start, and really propel these companies forward.
Right on. Can't wait.